I've been here for a while, still a baby in an after-grid sense for the most part, but I've been able to see quite a bit of the business on the electric side here, so I'm very happy to be on, or sort of in this sort of renewable energy space here going forward. So I'll give a chance to, so some of our co-hosts here, Eversource, Unitel, DOER, Gary's in the back, he'll get up here for a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk you through a number of topics today. So the interconnection process, the timing, just to make sure. I mean, most of you have probably gone through the process a little bit today. What we want to do is kind of walk through the process rather. So the interconnection. So Tim Rowan's going to come in and talk about some of the other good things that are happening in this space, right? Consistently changing, consistently growing. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll take a quick break, maybe a little bit quicker than we had planned because we're getting started a little bit late here. We want to make sure we get you out before noon time, definitely before 3 o'clock hits and traffic starts up again. So we'll kind of move quickly through that. We got engineering here. Talk about some of the technical aspects of the work that's being done. We'll talk about the post-ISA coordination, do a quick build walkthrough, right? Again, the stuff that you guys deal with in this process. We'll make sure we get all that stuff out there, make sure that you guys ask questions and get answers. At the end, we'll obviously have some time to ask questions, but please, I don't want to leave everything to ask questions along the way so we can make sure that we have time to answer what it is you guys showed up for here today. So just a couple of quick pieces here. Fire exits, you guys all came in the front door. That is the closest exit here. So you go out either this door, the back door, right? You take a right through there. A left, go back towards the main entrance. The front doors will be directly in front of you. If you took a right, there is a back door down that hallway. You came out this door and you took a right, go to the end of the hallway, take a left, there'll be another door in front of you to get out in that direction also. So fire exits. The restrooms, for those of you who didn't see it, if you go out the back door, you go out that entrance there, it'll be sort of take a right and a quick left, and that will be right there. For those of you who do smoke, there's designated smoking areas as you go outside the building, obviously. And then mobile phones, right? Our phones are going to ring. Your phones are going to ring. Please stand up. We have a nice little lobby right here behind here that you guys can go and take whatever phone calls you ultimately have there. So quick introductions. You heard about me. I'm going to have some of my team here stand up. We also want to put names with faces, right, to make sure that as you guys are talking to these people on the phone, have an idea of who they are and what they bring to the table experience-wise. So I'll hand that off. Alex, I'll let you go first.
I'm Alex Kyriakos. So I'll be talking about the process part, but I handle the complex applications.
Patrick Sullivan. I am a customer facilitator. I handle small expedited projects on the DG team, and I'm going to assist in running the webinar.
My name is Marco Patricia. I'll be walking you guys through post-ISA process today, and I manage the complex project in Western and company. I'm Tom Hurley. I work directly with HACOM in the West Federation of Massachusetts in complex projects and for 2 months. We work together.
I'm Jeff Cahill. I'm an engineer with the Distribution Planning Department, and I'll be covering the technical portion of this presentation. Hopefully, I can answer a lot of your questions when it comes to engineering. Some of you might have met me on the phone, and for those of you who have complex projects,
Hi everyone, I'm Melissa Drury. I have complex projects with South Shore, Massachusetts.
Hi, Colin Sullivan. I handle complex projects in Central and Western Mass and Rhode Island as well.
So out in the front desk, we have Tim Kumlova. He is also the same for the tacos. Back in Europe, out there also. Another complex project manager, something very different what we do. And then Eric Munzer is out there. He does similar work to what Patrick does, sort of that 500 kilowatt and below expedited type project. Those are the guys out there. Feel free to go back and say hi. I don't know. I don't think there's anybody else EverSource here. No. All right. So Jerry, let me hand it over. Actually, let me do the safety moment, and then I'll hand it over to you. I apologize. So summertime, right? It's been nice out, been hot this week. I know my wife and kids went to the balcony yesterday, had a fun time, sent me pictures. But I want to talk about rip ties here, right? And actually, this was a safety message that was given in another meeting that was at, I think Patrick originally gave it, and I thought it was actually good information, things you don't think about. When you go to the beach, even a lake, there could be rip tides anywhere where there's waves, right, moving water and stuff like that could actually create a rip tide. If you do get caught in a rip tide, stay calm, right? If you can stand up, put your feet in the ground, stand up if you're in shallow water. Most of the time, it's just dragging you out. It's not dragging you up, right? So if you basically stay calm, get your feet in the ground, let it do its worst, right? And for the most part, you're going to stay above water. Don't panic. Right. If you put your feet in the ground, if it's shallow enough, right, and the rip tide's not that hard, you can get your footing, let it pass, try to move out of it. Don't be afraid to call for help, right? Beaches have lifeguards, people, and if you yell for help, you can get someone to come out here, help you get out of that rip tide. Stay parallel to shore, right? So if you're trying to fight the rip tide, it's just going to keep pulling you back out, right? So don't try to swim directly back to shore. Swim parallel to shore to get out of that rip tide, and then be able to make your way back. So just a couple of quick points here, right? Things that I know that I didn't think about, things I worry about with my young boys, right? You know, trying to think that they just wouldn't know how to handle it. So it's the fact that we would all know how to handle it, be able to help save them or be part of that. Just a quick little safety message. So let me hand it over to Jerry.
Hi, folks. My name is Jerry Bingham. I'm the senior coordinator for the DOER, the Coordination for Distributed Energy Resources. If you haven't heard my name before or met me before, I'm one of the people at DOER to help with the interconnection process. I've been involved in helping to negotiate a form of process that the policies that you're facing right now if you're seeking interconnection. Because of that, we set up a DG working group website. It is the place where we keep track of the technical standards review group meetings, which are happening on a quarterly basis to work out the technical requirements for interconnection. If you want to figure out how to get in touch with me, the best way to find my contact information there. Reach out if you're having issues with interconnection, you're not sure that the utility is following the tariff. Generally, what ends up happening is people are frustrated by delays. They don't really understand the process, so it can be very helpful to just sort of have someone help you wade through the many pages of the tariff. This is the reason why we're doing the workshops as well. It's by agreement through negotiation with the utilities. So I generally like to come up here and let you know who I am, but also to show appreciation to the utilities for the work that they're doing. The fact that they're doing these workshops is really important. The quality of the workshops does vary from utility to utility. So what we like to do is post the website on the website at the DG website, the PowerPoint presentations. If you're having trouble figuring out, which ones to attend, I do recommend attending each of the utilities interconnection workshops. They all follow the tariff. They all have their own nuances. It's important to know those differences. Reach out to us if you're noticing a difference that is troubling to you. We'll see if we can work through that. Okay? So that's pretty much it. Thanks to you guys for all your work. I know it's a very busy time.
All right, so as Jerry mentioned, I think we made this presentation available to everybody in the invite. I think we made a couple of changes. We'll send out an update. We'll also get it posted. So we wanted to quickly show here some map of Massachusetts. So you can see sort of the multiple utilities that work here, the towns that we ultimately are in. So National Grid territory is what would be whitish gray up here. Then we have the Eversource territories, the old N-Star in green, the east, and then Western Mass Electric, yellowish to the west, and then the various municipals. All right, so I just want to talk real quickly, because I've only been here for 3 months. These are the only slides the team trusted me with, so I'll try not to mess them up. Just talking about the DG trends, what we're starting to see here. So what we are seeing is actually the number of applications are going down, but the complexity and the number of megawatts is going up, right? So, you know, what we want to kind of put out there is that over the last 4 or 5 years, we've interconnected quite a bit onto our system. And what we're seeing is more and more complex work coming in, and then we're actually seeing what we would have considered to be less complex work become more complex. It's becoming more complex because of the work we have to do to study all these feeders, because of everything that's on these feeders now going forward, right? So, you know, we want to kind of put it out there. We're working as quickly as we can on these projects, but they are complex. It does take us. The volume is still high, even though the number of applications are coming down, the complexity is going up, but the volume right, so just kind of keep in mind that as you're looking for new locations, you know, new sites, deciding, you know, how much capacity that you want to build into your system, right, that there's quite a bit of work still going on here in the New England area. So this is just a little bit more data to back that up, right? Still saying year-to-date, year June, number of applications have come in here in Massachusetts, right, 3,300, almost 3,400.
All applications, CNR doesn't include residential?
They include
Residential?
So does that?
Yes,
it is residential as well. Yeah. So it's not just the expedited.
Yeah. So one for simplified, the one in the blue there, simplified applications, majority of those are considered residential. But
again, as the trend continues to show, specifically in Massachusetts, the number of megawatts is still continuously rising compared to where we were at this point last year. And then just the last piece of this, what we've interconnected. So how much work we've done, right? So we've interconnected almost 3,000 so far year to date here. A little bit less megawatt-wise as opposed to where we were at this point last year. But again, still very high. This is our busy time. The end of the calendar year, also a very busy time for us. So I would implore you that if you do have projects that are looking to be done by the end of the year, that we are having continuous conversations with various job owners here, making sure that all the ducks are in a row, that we can get this work done. Incredibly high volume here in the summer, early September, then whole applications follow on. We'll have a little more gas. So just to understand, you know, the volume that we are dealing with. We don't have a very large team, right? There's about 25 of us here at National Grid, and we are working all this work to make sure it all gets done. Just an idea of what the ultimate volume looks like. Any questions, additional questions on any of that? All right. Awesome. So I'm going to hand it over to people who know what they're doing, and please. And I will say that, you know, the presentation is set up to walk through the process, but we are here to answer questions. So please stop, ask those questions. We want to focus on making sure that you've gotten the answers to that. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Will. Good morning, everybody. My name is Alex Kyriakos. Many of you probably know me. So we're going to cover the interconnection process here, try to get back on a little bit on track here. Feel free to slow me down if you have any questions or so, as Will mentioned, and go from there. All right, so what discussion here is, the purpose here is the steps, timetable, cost, what the common missteps are, and any additional links and contact information. If you have additional questions, we'll cover that. So the next item here is it's the importance of having an interconnection process is important for not only for yourselves, but as the public and utility folks as well. Not looking just for the now time, but also thinking about the lifetime of the project. 20 years from now, is the plaques okay? Is everything else standard there? So those are things we're kind of concerned about, looking long-term wise. Also, no adverse impacts to the system there. So islanding, transient conditions there, frequency, voltage. Jeff Cahill will cover a lot more of that. I'll just give you a little brief touch of what we are before Jeff dives into more detail. And also important to note is for the interconnection tariff there, you can't connect until you have received permission from utility. So you have additional service agreement and also approval. And also there's billing implications too. If you don't have, if you don't submit an application there, you might be able to an issue where, yeah, I have a solar installed. Well, what's going on here? You might not have installed there. So it's more trying to help everyone else get this process here and go and so forth. So important to note here is here. So we have the pre-apps, simplified, expedited, impact study. And these ones here kind of drew little lines here to note that each of these little items here are essentially steps here. So when you submit a pre-app report, right, that causes us to say, okay, someone has the application. All right, let's look at that, let's review that, and see, and provide information. Now, once you look at the pre-app report, I'll cover that more and more detail there, then you have a decision to make. Should I still proceed forward? Is there a higher cost risk there? So you have to do your analysis to figure out, based on the information we provide you, whether you feel is reasonable for your project to proceed forward. So, covering the Windows test part, Hacker McCutcheon will cover that, and also the RD Connect. These links right here are for the process-wise for Massachusetts and Rhode Island. So, if I know you have a lot to absorb here, so if you want to take something back, you can always look at it on our websites too. It's very informative, has a lot of information there. Not to scare everybody, but it's a good amount of detail. All right, so now let's talk about the pre-app report here. So with the pre-app report there, here's information that the customer provides on the left-hand side. So facility information, asking about what the standalone, if there's existing proposed generation, and is the service upgrade needed or not. So we provide this information there. In turn, on the right-hand side here is what we provide as utility to give you guidance on your proposed location there. So at least the important things to kind of get there is what the size is three-phase in your area or not? Do we have, how much generation is on the feeder? How much is proposed on the feeder? So, and that way you can kind of determine, is it within a mile or two or not? So if you're out in the far area and you're trying to do a 2-megawatt project, and you're like 2 miles away and there's no three-phase there, it will be a higher amount of cost to deal with. So, any questions so far? Okay. All right, so very much it all starts with the application here. You submit a complete application, if it's 500 kW or larger, a pre-app report. Also, there's a pre-app fee as well too, application fee, $300 for a minimum, and $750 for $7,500 for a maximum fee, and it's $450 per kilowatt. Also submit a PE stamped one-line diagram, and the site diagram is well important too. That includes the access road, locations where you are there. It's important to include that information for us. So now the common application mistakes here. So here's the ones that got tripped up here. About the application not signed or dated, application differs from the name on the account, facility address is not correct, utility meter not included is not correct. One of the other important tripping items too here is for this new service work here. If there's any new services, if you're upgrading your service, you should let us know at that time. If you're a different power producer, you should have that request number created. So by the time we come to drafting the ISA, we know exactly what your details is, and we don't have to kind of do double work here and go back and say, oh, wait a minute, you told about this after we gave you your interconnection service agreement. And it's important that any new service work you're doing, get that up in front of time so we can be prepared and we can help you out with that. Okay. So next one here is continued for documentation mistakes there. So for legal info document here, it's important that, especially for third-party ownership, or if there's a change in the ownership based on the assignment letter that you sign projects out to other people, we should have a legal info document too. So we'll make sure that whoever we're talking is the correct people we're talking to. Also, it's important there too is not only for the interconnection service agreements, but also amendment letters as well. And also we have flow line diagram issues where size may be missing from a transformer, XY ratios or impedances are not. No, those are the ones that slow us down because we need to do the analysis of that before proceeding forward. So, and then also I mentioned before the site errors, and as mentioned as I had before, it's access road. Typically, it's 18 feet across, and you should leave enough room if you're a power producer, IPP, for a bucket trucks to turn around. So that's one of the things that's key there for the site errors that we do this so much. We look at this, we review this here, and if you have issues there, we kind of stop you guys, because we need that information before proceeding forward. So the next item here is, there we go. So, that's the next one. Okay, thank you. So the application integration costs here. So there's a couple of fees here. The application fee. There's fees for studies we're doing. So if it's an impact study, detail study, a transmission, if there's an involved, or a supplemental review. Not everything requires a study. Again, depends on the complexity of it, or what's bigger size you're planning to do. Also, there's a witness test fee, and then we get to design, construction, and installation of the facilities. So now what we have is we'll cover now a simplified review path. So these are typically projects that are for single phase UL listed inverters that are under 15 kW. If it's 3-phase, it's 25 kW or less. And it's on a radial feeder. And it's mainly all those residential projects there. And it has to be UL listed. So the next item here is a simplified review path. So you need to submit a complete and signed application. There's a $28 application fee. Your approval is within 10 business days, unless projects not compatible with the service. If there's any, then they might be complex, so go to a next level here. There's also the installation, the certificate of completion, signed local wiring inspector. And within this link here, you see there's a completion documentation. That link you click onto is a simplified checklist. So what you need at the end of the day when you provide your information to National Grid, it's all right here. Just go on the list, say yes, yes, yes. Have it provide this information. Also, once you get the certificate of completion, we can we tend to waive the inspection. Assuming that we see the net quality pictures for review there. Then the approval is rapid, and there's little or no cost. Rich, do you want to have anything to add on this?
No.
Okay. So Rich's group handles the simplified process there. Any questions on simplified? Yep.
You changed it to 15 kW. Is that still eligible for net metering?
No, that rule has not changed yet. So for net metering, it's still at 10, but for the application-wise, at 15.
Another question about two-family housing.
Okay.
You can't get net metering for both meters?
Well, it depends if it's a single parcel of land. If it's a single parcel of land, and the deeds and the land says so it's a single parcel of land, If it says single parcel land, then only one is eligible for net metering. It's based on DPU order 11-11E. Now, if you're able to say that you have a, the deed and the land has, has provided it's a separate place, and you can provide that to us, then we can accept that as a separate part of property.
I have a meter for a right of way, for a street, for a gate. Can I connect that to the house as well, and that's a separate parcel of land, or can I have two separate services?
Well, essentially, we'd like to keep it in one separate service unless you have like a firewall or something else. If you're talking about one building or one field.
One building.
One building, yeah. So usually, if the fire code inspector allows a separate service, and usually have to be, and if it's up to that speed, then you might be allowed to have a service. Depends on the area. Depends on the wiring inspector as well. Approval. All right. Yep.
The completion documentation, what is involved in it?
So I'll cover that a little bit later on the slides there. But if you click on the link, it'll explain, and we'll talk more and more. Okay. Nope. All right. Now we're going on here to the expedited process here. So it's so those ones I mentioned before is those ones that are under 15. Now we're talking about the ones over 15 kW for single phase, over 25 for three phase. Does not apply to non-UL listed inverters. So right here we have a time frame that's involved here. So it's 3 days to acknowledge application, 10 days to say it's complete, and about 25 days to review the screening to make sure that it's adequate. Then after that time, if there's some reviews needed, 20 days to do it to second review. Then as well, there's then 10 days to send the agreement there. Once you've said you're okay with the supplemental review results or the screen results, we draft up the service agreement. So total time frame we're looking at 45 to 65 days, depending if supplemental review is needed or not.
I'm sorry, are these business days or are these?
Yes, business days. Any questions? The expedited? All right, so now let's continue the system expedite here, but we're talking about the supplemental review within. Oh.
On expedite, actually for all of them, would it be possible for you to expand the new service you have for the simplified, where I could open an account, be a customer of National Grid, and submit applications to you and have you to bill me monthly for whatever I've sent to you the prior month?
Well. So are you asking for just
for interconnection process? I know that you now do that for the simplified, where it's $28.
Yeah.
Send you 100 of them, you're going to send me the bill for $2,800. Can we do that for simplified?
So you're actually sending like a lump sum there, and then have it divided amongst the simplified applications. Am I understanding?
Well, for expedited, if I send you 4.
Yes.
Can I just do it as a customer of yours and have you bill me monthly for sending you 4, as opposed to sending you a check with each one?
Yeah, it's for our billing systems. We require that at least a separate check. Believe it or not, it's kind of hard work in our systems here to transfer it over. We request it's easier, it's more faster for you to send separate checks for each application. So that way we can deposit that correctly into the account there. And also, if you sell that project off to somebody else there, it kind of keeps it lined up in a hole there.
I guess related to that would be just the process of getting a work request
from
you and establishing the customer account information.
Mm-hmm.
Can we do that in paper so that if I'm submitting an application to you, it could just say, check a box, say, new account needed, and give you all the information and have you guys establish the account so I don't have to call customer service, because that is a brutal system.
There's a separate group there. Unfortunately, we don't handle that. So then it's more likely you have to call them in, and usually they would be able to tell you the number right away. Once you tell them, here's my service, here's what we can do, they provide you a pending account number and with a work request number. That's kind of the system we have to deal with. Hopefully later on, we're working on improvements and working on a DG portal, or hopefully some of those things in like a longer term will be more effective that allows you to do that. But right now, currently, our systems don't allow for that, but we are working on getting to the next generation.
Any timeline for when that's going to be?
I'm planning this for software deployment. You know, it's right at the end of the year, but then sprays all phases and certain groups there. You know, I mean, it might be 2 to 4 years out. You know, so it depends in software. So it's affecting multiple people, multiple groups there, and users have to test it.
There's aspects of the portal that will be running all the time.
Yeah.
And then there's various rollouts.
Yeah.
Looking back to my first question, with the portal, will you be able to, do automatic ACH payment or credit card or something?
So I think
Yeah.
that's not in that first one.
Yeah.
I don't think it's rocket science.
No, it's what we're working on.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of systems that we're bringing together and kind of get rid of old ones. So as Will mentioned, we're rolling out in phases, so it takes time. You might see something at the end of the year, as in a newer system that we're having, so that if you want to look up online about your application, we have some basic stuff there. Then we continue to improve it over time here. Especially with the feedback of developers, and and try and improve it to make it more efficient, more better for you to get more out of it. All right. So summary review. Right now, what it looks like here is the average generation less than 67% of the minimum load on feeder. And this supplement review is Jeff that deals with that. They'll do a study. So the maximum fee is $4,500, and then tells you system modifications, reasoning, and cost for that, and any protection requirements that may be needed. All right. So next one we have here is the standard review path here. So now these are the ones that are more complex here. Those ones that are non-listed inverters, other generations, large-scale PV greater than 500 kW, and most large CHPs as well. So those are so the reason why things go into the standard process is that we feel it'll take more than 30 engineering hours of time to identify the modifications. So then here we have is a standard review path here. So you have the initial review of customers need, and we have the detailed study if it's needed as well, ISO notification, study, and service agreement. The key thing to note here, as before I talked about, is the expedite part. For the standard one here, is the impact study, is what's added here. So 55 days. And if it's considered complex there, we have additional 5 days to review. So then also the time it takes to turn around the agreement is 15 days from when we return the impact study to you, review the results. If you have no questions, you're good. Okay, I'll draft up my ISA. Okay, we'll draft up the ISA and go forward with that. Any questions on the standard?
Yeah, is your determination of 30 hours or more the only filter which puts an application under expedited versus standard, or
Yeah.
are there any other filters?
No, it's usually 30 hours and depends on how complex the review is, how much is involved there. And Jeff will mention that in his slide in the technical part there.
Question.
Yep.
The 67% threshold, how does that impact projects under 500 kW? How far down the line?
We do have a little buffer there. That's for those ones for simplified, as we have the larger scale one, 65%. So that way, if we don't deal with an issue where it's a 5 kW and now it's going to trigger 3B0. So we do try to have a buffer there, and that's what the 67% is a buffer for that to kind of allow those smaller projects to go forward. But the larger ones, the large scale commercial ones that would be the ones that trigger it, would have to pay for that 3B0 cost.
And what is the threshold now? Instead of 500 kW for them, 250, or what is the?
I mean, it really depends on the feeder and how busy that is when it goes back to the substation, how many feeders there are, how much DG is pushed back into the substation. So that 3B0 is ground fault protection on the high side of the transformer there. So this is kind of more like affecting the transmission area, where you feel that it might go back as that far up to that at any point in time. So it's kind of hard to determine right now. It's usually when you submit the application, then we can, and go into more detail, then we can kind of figure out, okay, oh, this Treasure Valley substation or Summit substation, oh, it's heavily loaded, there's a lot of DG on here, and that's kind of your trigger there. All right, any other questions here for? All right, so now, as I explained here, we talked about the pre-apps, right? So here's kind of like a rough guideline that we kind of put together, is that for wind generation applications on non-dedicated circuits, so those ones that have load, 4.5 MVA, and for largest solar, 6 megawatts on a 23K class circuit, so it's like a sub-transmission, that can go up to 6 MVA. Now we're saying this is a thumb rule here, it's a guide. Now can you do more than that? Possibly. But we're just kind of giving you a warning that, hey, there might be more studies, more analysis needed. So hence we kind of have this as a rough guide here to kind of, when you see the pre-app report, you can kind of see, oh, how much DG there is, and you can kind of see, okay, this might be a little larger, might be something that comes up when you do the screening that it might lead to a larger, more significant cost, or might affect the substation with 3V0. Same thing here when you talk about the express feeders here too, is that, for wind application, 30 MVA on a 34.5 class feeder. And the largest solar on express is 14 MVA on a 13 kVA class circuit there. So next item we're talking about here is holds. So for each part of the process, as I mentioned that flow chart there about those lines cut through, it's a kind of give and take. You provide us information, prompts us to do action. If we provide that action, we tell you if you want to proceed forward or not. If you look at the results of what you receive and you said, yeah, proceed forward, we take it to the next step. Now, if you're taking the next step, we might need additional information. Now, if we don't get that information, essentially the clock is on hold because we need that information to proceed forward. Whether it's having the agreement signed, if it's a impact study or supplement review, or have received the payment. So until those clear, and if we need an updated one line as well too, that is considered the hold time. So that hold time is what will kind of further delay your project there from the timelines I mentioned before. So what's key here is that you can request additional time in a milestone. Company gets extra time to achieve that milestone. And if you request significant project change, so if you're changing to a different feeder or something else, it might require a new application or a study of a restudy of the impact study. Depends on how large the system size is. So examples, is a inverter change and what is deemed as significant. That's a key point there. And, there's also a process to review people in the queue as well. This tariff thing is just to break up here. It's right here. If people haven't seen this, this is 141 pages. So this is a lot of material here to read. Sometimes I may not get everything right, and you might ask me, hey, am I doing this correct? Is this right or what? And we try to refer our Bible here, this tariff process here, look at this and say, oh, yeah, this is what it should be for process, for time frame wise. It's a lot of material here to review, and it's a little intimidating here when you go look through this because it's 141 pages there. All right. So after the next thing item here is the completion documentation here. So this is what we talked about for the documentation earlier. So mentioned that as-built PE stamped, signed and dated. So we have the certificate of completion, signed and dated. We have the commissioning memo, signed and dated. Schedule Z. You see a pattern here. So if you're making changes in any of the process here, that's signing and dating, saying that this previous drawing is now superseded by your new drawing. That's what we kind of insist on making sure it's signed and dated. So if you're changing your application, you're reducing the size a little bit, oh, we need a new application reflecting that signed and dated to reflect that new change there. So we make sure our paperwork, all our paperwork that we receive from you is accurate and correct. And that's why, you'll get additional kind of holds and time for that. And also municipal inspection, if you're calling a work request and you're upgrading your service, that inspection has to be called in by the wiring inspector. And if you receive net metering allocation, if you haven't, you can be a qualified facility. Going to the lower right here, Tim will cover in his part there for that part. But like the difference between net metering, you might be dealing 13 cents opposed to qualified facility, 3 to 5 cents. Also, pictures. In order for us to be comfortable with the site and forego us from doing a utility inspection, we require quality pictures of the site. So mainly it's the AC disconnect switch, the inverter generator. There's a 10-watt transformer. Where is that connected to? If the meter's on the transformer, there should be a picture there. The meter socket with the plaques and place cards. Any current limit device, and also important, the tap location and breaker. So wherever you're connecting to there, it's important to have. And also what we look at too as a utility is the distance between the utility meter versus the disconnect switch. Is it next to each other? Is it further away? Is it on the other side of the wall? Now, from our perspective here, is if a meter worker comes out there, they're not aware of that, there should be a plaque on the site there at the meter location saying this is where the disconnect switch is, and also with appropriate labeling saying that the sources are fed in 2 directions. And this is what I mentioned before earlier, is for those people, this is for projects that, not only 5 years down the road, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, the length of the project. You and I, some of us will retire here, some of us will go into different things here. But then what should remain constant is that language there. So if anyone comes here cold on site, they know exactly what to expect, and also the labeling as well too for safety. Right. Any questions on the complete documentation? All right. So then now we'll talk about behind the scenes here. So what's involved for utility perspective here? So review, replace, metering, modifications. Larger sizes, if they're 5 megawatts or larger, they need a NEPU reliability committee needs to review that. Also, registration at the asset with ISO New England. Now, if there's any maps we need to update, anything for dispatch. If you're for maps wise, if you're touching a substation at least has 150 drawings. So if we touch one of the items here, we have to make sure every single documentation is updated. So it'll take time to go through every single documentation to make sure that it's updated with, if it's DTT or 3V0 or any regulator changes, any settings changes as well too. That all has to be updated. That it takes time for. And also any other if there's special operating conditions too. The guidelines should be available and printed there, and also future testing of your relays. So meter calibration, insurance tracking, kind of those things there after the project's been interconnected. And those are the ones that should be continually have on record, whether, if you're continually testing your relay, making sure that's within the limits there. And also we do our meter calibrations and insurance. It's important to get that yearly insurance submitted. All right, so now what we talked about here is the stakeholders involved here. So from a utility perspective here on the left-hand side, you can see how many players that, if it's a 2 megawatt project or larger, that myself or Hackab or any of those people that handle complex projects would have to deal with. So then it can go from talking to the metering person, dispatch, telecom folks, working with engineers on there, any inspections, working with our customer service group for billing reasons wise. Also control center as well too. All those parties need to be available there, whether it's EMS updates, updating our screens to reflect correctly on that if it's a generation. And also from the customer side here, I know you guys have multiple people you deal with, but one thing I just want to make sure that folks know is that we have one main point of contact. Can't stress that enough there. If the customer, electrician, and somebody from your electrical testing company is all calling me at the same time, I don't know who to talk to here. So I want to make sure there's one main contact there, and then information gets filtered down to whoever needs to know for the project. We like to keep it as close as possible, not because there's a lot of people to know for projects-wise. So we have 1 or 2 main point of contacts there. We'll make sure for any milestones that happen in the tariff here that they're aware of that. And that's what we kind of request is that make sure that a single point of contact, just to avoid any confusion and and kind of doing a double triple work by explaining the situation to multiple parties. So next one here, we're almost done here, is the most important thing to get out of here, is to submit the application early. That's one of the key points there too, that's involved there. So making, before you buy your equipment, submit the application early. The more early you get to us, the more likely we can tell you if there's any modifications needed in your system. And also you can always, request general information from us as a utility, as in the pre-app reports and so forth, to help you out with that decision. Also the large applications take longer to study, and the tariff, as I said before, has a wealth of information. Also important to know is that link right here in the bottom takes us to the DG homepage. So when you look at that link there, that gets you to a sub-file. You can look at documentation, any forms you need to fill out, any guidance. You can get that on the bottom here of this link. So to that gives you information. And if you still have questions, you can submit an email to our distributed.generation@nationalgrid.com email address, and that will help you out there. And someone can help you out with that information you're looking for. And also, as I said before, timeframes, standard working days. Those include any delays, missing information, or any force majeure. Any questions? All right, so here's our contact information. As I mentioned, with Will was talking earlier, myself, everyone on the team here for New England and aside. So everyone, if you have any questions, you feel free to reach out to any of those folks there. Now, other utility contact source information as well. If anything's incorrect, let me know. I'll make the corrections there. And the last thing to note here is resource information. Jerry mentioned the DOER, the slide there too, so they have a lot of information there, going through local sites. Also net metering basics, and industry guidance as well. As I said before, a lot of information here. Not only is this a 141-page document to read, but there's other information as well too. So when you do talk to other people and making them aware of, is this feasible or not, you could tell them what the right information and what you think that needs to happen for your project there, and that way you can be more informed of what the process steps are to kind of avoid any, heartburns, or hiccups, or anger. All right, so now done with my part here, and any further questions before we switch over to Tim Rowan here? Nope. All right, so I think we're done with this part here, and Tim Rowan will come up momentarily here.
All right, thanks, Alex. Tim Rowan here from our regulatory team. Just getting some coffee to make sure I'm wide awake for all your questions. I don't want to be disappointing anyone here. So net metering is obviously passe, right? We don't have any cap space left in National Grid anyway, so we can talk to it all day long, but it really won't help us at all in the room, right? So except for cap and temp facilities that are still eligible. The DPU is going through rulings right now, trying to figure out should there be blanket exceptions to the single parcel rule. If you may or may not have gotten involved with some of those projects where under current rules, you can only put one system on a single parcel of land. If you want to put a second system in, you've got to get an exemption from the Mass Department of Public Utilities. So they're going through a proceeding right now where a lot of different folks gave comments, we gave comments, other parties gave comments as to where would they allow exemptions for that single parcel rule. And for us, it's more going to be the cap exempt facilities than the larger projects. But just running through this quickly, obviously you've got the 3 classes of net metering, plus there are also a separate proceeding, which I don't think we even have in the slides, on small hydro as well, right? That's legislation action last fall, I guess. And so they're going through that rulemaking proceeding now as to how small hydro would participate. And small hydro under state law, it looks like it's only going to get paid the standard offer default service price, not the full retail credit price. Oops. Because under net metering currently, depending on what type of facility, so I think the small hydro will only be paid that component and none of the other components going forward. That's legislative action. Probably won't affect most folks. A lot of them are existing small hydros that are actually qualifying facilities on a FERPA, and they'll get paid wholesale prices for that, or they have a bilateral contract with another entity that buys their output. So, but again, that'll come up. There'll be we'll modify the naming tariff to accommodate the small hydro once the DPU has finished the rulemaking proceeding. Right, it's still ongoing as we speak. And again, that's where you'll get that specific piece here. The latest on the caps is, I mean, there is still room under the cap on the waiting list for various size projects for us. We've only got ours, okay, because I think Eversource still has 250, 300 megawatts, I think, available under the caps. Somewhere in that range. There's plenty of cap space in the state. It's just our footprint got fully up to the caps very quickly, as everyone knows in the room.
We have a lot of land, right?
What's that?
We have a lot of land. Space.
Well, also our credits actually are more lucrative than Eversource West, old Western Mass Electric. Their small commercial rate doesn't pay as much in credits as our small commercial rate does, and that's where we both have the land, relatively expensive land, but because our credits pay so much more, I mean 5 or 6 cents more per kilowatt hour between Western Mass Electric and Mass Electric and National Grid. So that's why our cap is full, and theirs is not still. So the net metering is through the mass system of the system of assurance run by Cadmus. If you're not an exempt facility, exempt is 10 kilowatt single phase or 25 kilowatt three phase on an existing three phase service is where you get the exempt sizes for the projects. And otherwise, you've got to go through the cap allocation process. And again, it's looks like there's a megawatt or so available under the cap for the private cap, and not a lot on the public. And then there's all this whole process to prove your public entity. Again, this is old hat to a lot of folks here. Here's where some of the work is. They're going together. I mean, this dates back a little ways. The reason for the single parcel rule was when the net metering first went into place in 2010. Folks would take a multi-megawatt project, break it up into smaller projects, so they get the higher credits. As you saw from this one, you get higher credits if it's less than a megawatt. So what entities did is they built multiple projects on a single parcel. And they're gaming the system. Yes, sir?
We have some projects that are affordable housing, and it's one rooftop over multiple parcels. And we only have one facility on the rooftop and one interconnection point, 1 meter. So it's really like either 1-to-1 or it's maybe 1/3 of a facility per parcel. If you take 3 parcels with 1 facility on it. Does that come into this rule, or is that?
They're actually working on that too in terms of the single parcel. That's part of the conversation of the docket that's open now about how can they grant blanket exemptions to the single parcel rule. And they're also looking at multiple projects on a single parcel, but also a single project on multiple parcels. And we've granted the optimal interconnection that we're allowed to do for projects that span multiple parcels, because if the interconnecting points and where the meters all go is more easier and more convenient for both us and the private developer putting it up, we've allowed that to occur where we have one connection point, and then the developer then runs the metering's all right in one place, and they run their high voltage cables to the other parcels. We've allowed that in a couple of occasions. I think Michelle, he's in the other room, but I'm pretty sure we've allowed that in a couple of cases. But specifically, what they're trying to figure right now on the single parcel rule is to anything more here? No. So, again, how will they, the challenge they have here, though, is even if you want, the big push to allow multiple less than 10 kilowatt projects on a condominium project, for example. So a lot of people can take advantage of that. The challenge you have there is that once you get over the cap exempt, you know, is the next one still cap exempt, or they have to go for a cap allocation? Because now that parcel has more than a single 10 kilowatt array. So again, in play at the DPU as we speak, and had some recent conversation with them and had some internal conversations about this just yesterday. So expect to have some order out of the department because they're getting flooded with multiple requests, you know, for these things. And they just want to try to figure out, or should there be blanket exceptions? And the key thing is, as long as it's not going to be considered gaming at all, that's where they will provide for the blanket. So
I'm turning a single family into a two-family.
What's that?
I'm turning a single family into a two-family.
Yeah.
Putting a second meter on. And the way it is right now, the second meter gets penalized because of the first meter.
Not like a penalty, just the rule is one, you got them one.
Right, but they're separate entities. They're separate people who are going to be using the electricity.
But a single parcel, right?
But a single parcel of land.
Well, that's why you call it the DPU and give your opinion about what you want to see. Right, but we're just the rules we have to. You know, unfortunately, people played the game system, and it made a mess for the rest of us. That's what happened. People gaming it, and they got.
If they change it, will it be retroactive?
Up to them. Usually, their orders are effective the day they go, and anything from that day forward is what's allowed. But they could allow grandfather. I mean, you know, it is regular. We don't make these rules. We're just required to police them, whether we agree with them or not. It's kind of a separate conversation, right? So again, we talked a little about the alpha interconnection. Very rare does the utility offer this up, but one of the things we are required to do initially is figure out, are you technically eligible for net metering? Because the interconnection process is there just to interconnect this system. The interconnection process isn't to say, when I'm done, I get net metering. It just says, when I'm done, I can operate safely and reliably in parallel with the electric distribution system. It's got nothing to do with what I get paid for the excess. That's a separate animal, either that metering tariff or the good old days of qualifying facilities that folks used to get paid way back in the day. So again, but non-exempt, you've got to go to system insurance. And with the new Solar Smart program we're talking about, and I'll talk about that in a minute, supposedly it's going to be set up so that they don't expect or will accept any more increases in net metering caps, because it's supposed to take over that program. So, some of this stuff is old hat to folks, net metering production recording, the summaries. So the key piece that we get into a lot of times is problems with the Schedule Z, right? When you're allocating credits from one entity to the other, and if you're changing Schedule Zs, you got, you know, more than a few accounts that have massive credits sitting on them that they'll never be able to use. We can't monetize that credit sitting on someone's electric bill. You have to use that credit up by usage or not. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, people have a hard time doing the base math of a Schedule Z, right? You've got 100%, you got to allocate, right, to a number of accounts. And you have to understand what each one of those accounts, what their average use was over a number of years to be able to figure out the percentage. But it's not rocket science. I struggle with why we have so many problems with it. Yes, we have a month or so before the system gets up and running, because and that's simply a function of when all the different accounts get billed, right? We have 1.3 million accounts we bill every month. So you can't bill them all in one day. You bill them on every work day of the month. So everyone's read, meters are read every month, every day of the month, business days. And we bill every day of the month. So that's what happens is if you're trying to allocate credits to bills that you already read the solar farm meter on the 22nd of the month, but the meters you're allocating to were read on the 5th and 6th, so you got to wait for the cycle to go through in order to get those credits over. And it does take diligence to keep up with these Schedule Ds. It's important people do that because, again, we get stuck in the middle of a lot of disputes and complaints about how much I was supposed to allocate to what account and all the rest. So it's really important we do our best to do that out there. And if you're still waiting for a cap allocation, PURPA, Public Utility Regulatory Policy Act of 1978, is still law of the land, which is how people used to get paid for excess for on-site generation, and that's still available to all parties. So I mean, it is the hourly clearing price for the load zone you're in, and for most hours, that maybe today we'll get to 8 or 9 cents, but usually the rest of the year it's around 2 or 3 cents. But it's just the price of power in the system, and the price of intermittent power in the system. Right? The fact of the matter is, in order to firm up a wholesale price to sell it as a retail product, you've got to have a capacity allocation to it. You've got to buy all your utility services in the ISO, yada, yada, yada. So a wholesale price of 2 or 3 cents is you're going to need to add 2 or 3 cents of other services in order to sell a firm product in the market from a retail supplier perspective. So,
So are you saying if you're getting the wholesale rate, it's going to vary during the day, or if you're just getting it 3 cents?
if you're over 60 kilowatts, and on an interval meter where we get hourly data, you get paid the hourly price. If you are less than 60 kilowatts with a standard regulatory meter, so that's just we'll just take the average of the whole month and apply it to the difference. So the average of all hours in that month will be whatever it is, and we'll calculate for whatever excess kilowatt hours you have in that month times that average price. It's how we do non-interval. Again, that average, if you go to the ISO website, you can download the clearing prices, you can have a calculator on averages.
What, with the smart inverters, grid smart inverters, that you can control, if you shut somebody's system off the grid and then still producing, then they don't get their net metering? How does that work?
You've got to turn the inverter off to stop producing.
Well, isn't that what the
Power's got to go somewhere.
isn't that what Enphase is doing with the series inverter? Is they're going to let you control whether or not it's going back out to the grid?
I'm not sure what they're doing. A lot of people working on various options of managing load internally at the house. Battery storage is a separate proceeding, just so folks are aware, on whether solar plus storage is eligible for net metering. You know, the way we read it in terms of the law and regulation is it's not, because there's no way to prevent the gaming of charging the battery up overnight with brown power. Which is exactly what happened in California. All of a sudden, magically in California, capacity factors that were in the 25% range jumped to 45% for solar projects, because magically they produced a lot more energy once the battery went in. And obviously it's because people were, and they had a big difference in on-peak pricing versus off-peak pricing. So it paid them to charge the battery at 8 cents and discharge it at 35 cents. In Southern California territory, San Diego Gas and Electric. So that's the.
Vermont is doing a battery test.
Yeah.
Is National Grid going to do anything like that?
We've got right now we probably have 20 megawatts of solar we own. And of that, there's probably 4 megawatts of energy storage. We're working with EPRI and other research groups to figure out how best to balance storage and solar together, so that we can figure out how best to propose new projects for customers going forward. We've got a separate phase with another 8 megawatts of storage we're installing on those at a lot of those sites. Again, to sort out all the challenges of the technical and how to use those advanced inverter functions in those systems to provide voltage support, either by injecting reactive power in the system to raise voltages or absorbing it through the inverter to lower voltages. Because our challenge is, I'm sorry?
Vermont is doing residential.
Yeah, we're aware of that.
Are you gonna do anything like that?
Not right, we haven't, we don't have anything in play today. But that doesn't mean we wouldn't do something over time. But again, that's the other process that's going through the DPU is this other eligibility for solar and storage. Proposed, it was a petition put forward by our friend at Solar City / Tesla, and it's working its way through the commission now as we speak. So we don't have a program with solar and storage, but there are some interesting things we're looking to do in the energy efficiency programs that'll include some elements of storage, but that's still in play. That's not solid yet. So. Solar Smart, there's not a lot to say. You've been keeping up with it. You saw there's lots and lots of meetings about it. The current status is, and you probably saw this, an RFP just went out a couple of days ago for a third-party administrator who will manage the program, just similar to the system of assurance that Cadmus runs now, is what it's going to likely run like. So you determine eligibility, and all the rest of that. That's on the streets now. Expected to be able to project sometime later next spring, depending on how long it takes to process some of the other paperwork and the DPU to review. I mean, it's another 1,600 megawatts of solar over 10 years. And even though it's less money than the old net metering SREC 1 and SREC 2 program, it's still multiple billions of dollars of customer monies that we'll be spending together. So we're going to review this and make sure it makes valid sense. I mean, the law is out there, so you got to do something with it. And the way it's set to work, if you're not familiar, is they're putting the initial 100 megawatts out to bid. Depending on that price, that'll kind of set your base price. And just as a point of reference, we have a feed-in tariff we operate in Rhode Island, again, put into place under state law. And in that program, we get 2 and 3 and 4 megawatt projects, solar projects, bidding 13, 12, 14 cents all in for a fixed 20-year feed-in tariff term. So that's what we're hoping to try to get here, is to drive the prices down. Whatever that base price is, let's call it 15 cents. Then there's a multiplier off of that based on the other types of things, like a residential might get paid 180% of that or 200% of that base price. A person with something in a brown field versus a green field might get a little kicker. If you put it on a green field, you might actually lose a penny or two because they want to start discouraging all the greenfield projects that have been being built. So there's a lot in play here. We expect the tariff to be filed with the DPU later this, hopefully early fall. Don't really have a specific deadline on that, but obviously we want to try to get it so the department has time to review it and approve it and get it in place. Obviously, there's a huge amount of stuff we have to do administratively, billing, et cetera, very different billing that we'll have to do for this versus net metering. So that's a big system change on our side. And again, we should see that RFP for the initial bunch of projects, and then sometime during the end of 2017, we should be able to see what those prices will be. Again, that's going to have to be part of the tariff approval process. But stay tuned. We don't have a lot more than what I'm showing you here to share with you at this point. These projects, and probably some of you are doing this too, people are queuing up for the new program, right? We just saw another 2 7-megawatt programs come across our desk the other day. The large projects queuing up for the Solar Smart program. When you get to those sizes, there's a significant amount of work that has to be coordinated with the ISO New England. You know, National Grid is a member of the ISO Transmission Owners Agreement. We're in play. We have no options but to comply with ISO rules and regulations. So therefore, we're all kind of have to do that as well. In certain areas where we're getting significant saturation, there can be some pretty significant work required at the ISO level. I mean, our challenge isn't on a day like today with the solar, right? Today's a perfect day for the solar. You know, the heat's affecting the efficiency a little bit today, but we have plenty of load to absorb it. Our challenge with solar is late May, early June, when you've got good solar out there, but you've got minimal loads. There's no electric heat running, there's no air conditioning running. And our challenge when we do our analysis and studies, impact studies, is to prevent over voltage conditions during those periods of time when we've got maximum solar generation. So at 2 p.m. on Memorial Day weekend, when everything's closed, the system already runs a little high in voltage just because the bulk generation can't spool down far enough either if loads really drop off. And then you throw solar generation on top of that, that raises voltage on top of it, because that's, right, because the way the solar gets out is it's got to punch the voltage up ever so slightly to push it out, right? So that's the challenge we have. So I'm sure you've heard complaints from some of your customers who their birds are tripping offline. Sunday afternoons, late spring, Saturday, Sunday afternoons in early fall, times where loads are very low, but everything's running full out for solar. So it is something that's our bigger challenge is managing the solar. And that's why our work with advanced inverters is so important to figure out where, in many cases, we're going to want people to absorb bars to drop the voltage over time. But we don't have all that done yet. But so this is the ISO working out there. Just be aware of that for the larger projects. Again, good old PERPA and QFs are still out there, been out there for 30, 40 years now. So this is still out there and still in place. So once you get to these big boys, these big projects, again, you're going to run into the challenge of, is it something that we're going to manage at National Grid directly, or is it something that ends up in the ISO New England's interconnection process and their personnel? So, and because we're starting to see larger and larger projects, we're going to have to work through this going forward. Again, in certain areas of our system, our Little Rest Road substation in Warren has almost 25 megawatts of solar on it, peak load of 10 or 12 megawatts. Minimal loads, when to bring to a flea market farm. Minimal loads of 5. So that takes 20 megawatts with 150,000 volt transmission system in that area. Not today, probably, but probably only 6 or 8 megawatts. But, I mean, that's where the ISO, and we get nervous about that kind of generation, where there's no load to absorb it. So again, this is where, again, most folks don't do much with the ISO, and if we recognize an ISO connection, we're going to tell you as soon as we can, so that we can, set expectations properly. ISO does not have the timeline we have. ISO does things when they want to, and we're all kind of stuck with it, whether we like it or not. It is what it is, and it can really raise havoc with schedules. So folks just need to understand that. And that's all there was on the compensation, the excess. Any other questions or concerns? Okay. Sounds good, Will. Thanks.
All right, so we're back on track. So we had a little bit of extra things. So if there's no more questions for Tim, what we can do is we can probably take about a 10-minute break, be back ready to go at 11:15. Bathrooms, again, out that door. There'll be far wall.
So, Tim, before you walk out, we have to add a couple of big questions. Okay.
Jump into the technical portion of it real quick and bring that up.
The answer is yes, no, yes. Is that right? What's there?
So we're going to go over some of the user-submitted questions that were submitted ahead of time. Would you read the question?
All right, so first question up submitted. Let's see. There's a question regarding the overview process from application to impact study and feasibility versus impact, and recommended ways to assess feeder capacity.
Well, you've got both the pre-application report that we provide. It's required over 500 kilowatts, but can be requested for any project. And then with that, you'll get, within a couple of weeks or so, you'll get all the existing DG that's on that, in that area, all the proposed stuff, and then also DOER, Jerry just walked out, they've got their monthly list that we supply to them, and we also post on our website. It shows you all the projects that are in queue. I mean, we are looking at mapping technology so that we can do this looking at a map. It's a little bit away. We kicked out our beta version of that in upstate New York a couple of months ago. We were playing with that a little bit here. We've got users from Rhode Island to do something like that too. So that's going to provide some additional transparency to the system. But again, the pre-app report is what's going to tell you if you've got 10 megawatts on that feeder already or proposed. If that's the case, our 13 kV system is about a 10 megawatt capacity per feeder system. So we're going to propose another megawatt on something that's already got 10. There's probably going to be some pretty good upgrades out there. So that's, but if that same area only shows a couple hundred kilowatts, then by rights, the system, the study should be quicker and easier and all the rest of it. But that's why we have the pre-application report, is to essentially have that first level feasibility so folks can then decide if they want to move forward. Another question?
Yep. The next one, and you touched a little bit upon this, was a discussion regarding the 2018 SMART program. I don't know if you had any further to add to that, or the slides you discussed.
I can make some cynical remarks or editorials about something that claims it's going to be the SMART program, right? Is it really smart? That's a whole separate question, right? But no, I think I gave everything I could on that one. There's not much else because there's just not much else to say. If you've been keeping up, DOER has the stuff on their website. Everything that's public is on that site. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes with us and the DOER that we're not we can't disclose at this point. But again, once the tariffs are filed, we're hoping sometime in September, then all that documentation will be out there, folks can review it and be able to provide comments back to the DPU as to what they think, if it's good, if it's bad, if how they would propose something different, all the rest of it. The DPU really likes well thought out, constructive input. I mean, every day. They need our help to be able to put together a program that makes sense for both installers, utilities, and for our collective customers. So don't be bashful about providing some constructive input to the tariffs once they're filed so that we can make them as simple as possible for folks to manage going forward.
The next question submitted was, what is the policy on UI PV systems that are already interconnected, which want to add storage? Does National Grid need notification? Will National Grid require the account to reconnect as QF?
So as I mentioned earlier, there's an open docket about solar and storage. So if you've got an existing solar facility, anytime you put a system in that can put power out on the system in parallel, like a battery, you are required to notify us and for us to do an initial interconnection review, right? And we add up the total AC capacity of all the inverters you have And so you got to be careful there with the capped exempt. If you got an 8 kilowatt solar project and propose a 5 kilowatt battery, you're not going to be capped exempt anymore, even if the department rules that that's eligible for net metering, which they had not yet to do. So we're not sure if they're going to rule it. So if you put storage in and you'll lose your net metering eligibility and we'll set you back up as a QF for your excess. But what we've been told by the storage folks is that, oh, they can manage the load of storage, they'll have minimal excess, yada, 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 on a real-time basis. Remember, we all know the physics of it, right? Just because you may generate as much as you need in a month, right, means you have to generate more every day than you use in order to have enough for the month, right? And that's the excess during so the coincident gen to load is the key parameter that we look at when we do our analysis too. We don't care what the monthly net is, it's immaterial to us. But so storage currently is not eligible for net metering, and ultimately, depending on how they rule, you would have to then also look at, I mean, the department's probably going to have requirements to make sure you can't charge the battery from grid power. So it gets a little complicated wiring. It's even more complicated trying to maintain and meet the national electric code that's required as well. So that's going to be, you know, but right now, yeah, solar's, if you're going to add storage, you have to tell us. We don't police this stuff because we have, what, 30,000 net metering customers in Mass right now, 200 megawatts or more of it. But through the Solar Smart program, we're going to have the storage capability. That's where you'll be able to get paid for whatever, however that works out with a solar storage project together. Derek?
Just a point of clarification, I'm sure many of you know DOER is involved in a storage RFP. We also were very involved in the SMART program and battery storage aspect of solar plus storage. There will be a requirement. There may be also an ATS kind of a thing like RPS. There will be a requirement for metering. Production metering is going to require 15-minute interval charge and discharge. That should address all your concerns, frankly. So how you look at that, whether you have the staff to be able to do the time and hours necessary to analyze big data that shows that, that's, you know, that's another thing. Knowing is complicated, very complicated, but just be aware, we're going to be requiring production meters anyway.
Yep.
And we are commenting in the testimony proceeding. That's the one to watch. Everything else Tim and I say right now is completely irrelevant once that order comes out.
Sure.
So we can have our opinions. Doesn't matter. It's really what we need to say.
Any other questions?
There were one or two more. You touched upon earlier multiple net meters on one property. I don't know if you want to elaborate any further on that.
Again, that's the other docket that's open with the department to try to figure that out. Currently, they're not allowed, but yeah.
Okay. And then this last question, it might be better suited for Jeff Cahill regarding effective grounding, reactors, and resistors. I don't know if you're going to speak to that in your slides, Jeff.
I don't go into it in specifics, but if that question is specific, I can answer it now.
It was not specific. No. Just, that was it.
The person who sent that in.
Send more.
Yep. We have the contact information for the person, so we'll be able to reach out accordingly. So.
All right. So earlier, I'm Jeff Cahill from the Distribution Planning Department. My whole department really, we engineer the distribution system, and within that, my group engineers the interconnections for standard applications generally. We deal with complex projects, anything over 500 kilowatts and above. So this is mainly going to be based on those projects. So if you're doing 500 kilowatt or more projects, this is for you. So the whole point of doing these engineering studies, which is 95% of my job, is because there's a lot of impacts that generators can have on the distribution system. We see them in the models that we build. We will tell you about those impacts in the studies that we do. And then from there, we say, okay, here's a cost estimate. This is what it's going to take to mitigate those impacts and keep them from, bothering existing customers, negatively impacting existing customers, breaking things, all sorts of stuff of that nature. And so
We'll cover transformer limits briefly. We'll touch on radial systems versus secondary networks, and we'll cover anti-islanding, which is definitely like a hot topic lately. There's a new version of IEEE 1547 coming out. It's being voted on right now, I believe. So that's going to be something to pay attention to if you're in this space. So again, IEEE 1547, it is, let's see, it references IEEE C37.90. It's just another standard to be familiar with if you're working in the DG world. That absolutely applies to simplified applications as well as standard applications, everything in between. And of course, we have all these rules that we have to follow, all these rules that we have to sort of make sure that you guys are following with your one-lines and your site plans and all the other stuff that you submit to us, because we have just piles of documentation on all these generators, and we need all that to make sure we keep it all straight. So again, we're talking about Massachusetts today. We have our own tariff, NBPU 1320. Somebody's already mentioned that today. And every state has their own. So this is a slide I've been waiting to get to with you guys like all week, because this is the most important thing I'm going to present to you guys today. So raise a hand if you've read through ESB 756 Appendix C for work in Massachusetts. This guy. Got a few of them out there. Everybody's hand in this room should be raised, because this is like incredibly important if you're going to do work in Massachusetts. I mean, it's going to cover, all the standards that you're going to need to know. It's going to cover all sorts of things that you need to include on your one-lines, on your site plans. It includes, shortened, abbreviated timelines of what you really go through in this sort of application, and it takes the tariff and sort of whittles it down a little bit, and then dives deeper into the technical specifications that you need to know for when you're submitting, one-lines to us or site plans to us or anything that we use for a study. So I see stuff come across my desk all the time, and it's really obvious that people haven't read this. But it'll save you so much time, it'll save you money, it'll really help you out if you guys all go through this document. And it's linked right here. So I think you guys were all sent the slides at some point. But you can go to it, it's public information, very important information if you're working with National Grid on these projects. So, in that document, we do cover the manual disconnect, main overcurrent protection. So that could be like your pole mount load break switch for a complex large job. Could be something in a switch gear if you are a behind the meter customer. Look, it covers overcurrent protection, so you need like a 51C and a 51G. Those are requirements for 500 kilowatt or greater projects, among other relay elements. It does cover interface points that can get a little bit specific depending on your application, because it really comes down to what your electrical room looks like in a situation like that. And key points from parallel generation requirements. We will determine the interconnection voltage. So when we give you the impact study, we'll make sure that we cover, this is the voltage and the feeder that we want to interconnect you to, and then we'll cover all sorts of other information in there. And of course, somebody mentioned on this earlier today, but we do need notification, of course, before you start sending energy into our system. Okay. And so we do have, local rules as well, to go along with the regulatory rules and product standards and all those things. So you have to comply with this NERC standard here. And really, all of these standards are to ensure the electrical reliability and security of the company EPS. So again, we have existing customers and we're obligated and we want to make sure that we keep providing them the same reliability that they had before and after you interconnect your system. So these large projects, these 5 megawatts, huge projects, have the potential to negatively impact existing customers, and we can't let that happen. Again, that's why we do the careful engineering to make sure that doesn't happen. And here, this is a short, abbreviated list of what we look for, in our system impact studies, things that we want to mitigate. Steady state and transient voltage changes. So we do have a load flow model that we'll look over. That's fun stuff. And we have a short circuit model where we look for increased fault current levels. We make sure that relays aren't getting desensitized. We look at overcurrent protection throughout the system from substation down to your own generator. Again, really cool stuff. And yeah, so those go into the system modeling studies. We'll detail in those studies, they could be like 30-page documents, but we'll detail in those studies if we did find issues in those models. And again, what you can do to mitigate those. And those will come out in a cost estimate at the bottom too. So you know exactly what to look for. This is a longer list of, potential impacts. Some are more common than others. So a lot of the time, fault detection can be an issue. Ground source impacts and ground fault over voltages. That's really an effective grounding thing. We can cover that after this presentation if you want. And I should have said at the beginning, if you do have questions, please raise a hand at any time.
Jeff, we have a question from one of the participants on the webinar regarding effective grounding requirements, mainly grounding transformer and National Grid's approach for evaluating and sizing. Are there any instructions from National Grid that helps the designer to calculate and design the grounding transformer in order to provide effective grounding to the grid?
Yes. So we do make sure that when we get our customers one line, that we evaluate the effective grounding based on the proposed configuration. And again, in the ESD, there is a list of configurations that will provide for effective grounding, so you know what transformer configurations are acceptable. And that's a mistake that we see frequently. So that's where this question, I'm sure, comes from. It really depends on what feeder you're on. It depends on how far along the feeder you are. Depends on the feed, all the feeder characteristics. So generally what we'll see customers propose, okay, here's what I want my effective grounding configuration to be. And we will evaluate that in the system impact study, and there's a section in the system impact study specifically to address this. And we will tell you, here's an ohmic value, this is what we will accept in our system, and this is exactly, what's going to make your system work with our system in terms of effective grounding. So right off the bat, when you submit a one-line and other documentation, they're generally not going to lead to an effectively grounded system. And that's why we say, this does not work, but this will work. So look for that in the system impact study if you get one. And if you do have questions, again, you can talk to us on the phone or something.
So just to follow up on that, a lot of my customers I work at development or something.
Yep.
We have a lot of our customers ask us about effective grounding, how to size it.
Yeah.
But you just said you give them an ohmic value. You actually give them the ohmic value. Or do you tell them to tell large or
so we won't give a KVA value. We will give an ohmic value, and from there, it's up to the customer to choose those surrounding values. So we provide ohms. It's up to the customer to figure out KVA, voltage, percent impedance, those factors.
So that kind of goes, it sounds like, with even the protection system also, from the point of some of the larger projects. I see sometimes that we look at. You guys ask for, like, for instance, the grounding reactors, or even sometimes the protection elements, like time delay, instantaneous elements, and things like that. And it looks like you're asking for us to provide what settings we want right now. Some of that, I guess from my view, it's kind of putting the cart before the horse, because we don't have the insight of what your effective coordination is. And in some cases, too, we can put down the elements, but do you really want us to put down information that we know is likely going to change anyways? Or?
Yes, I mean, we do, and I've gotten that question before.
Okay.
We want to make sure that you are, and that you do intend to provide this information. So if you just leave out your overcurrent elements on the one line or something like that, then we don't know that you're actually intending to put any at all. And again, in the impact study, there is another section that has overcurrent elements. This is what the customer proposed. This is what we need. So it's in the study. Like, it's all in the study.
It understood there, but I've also seen it where, because we provided info, and everyone, both sides, the developer and the utility, both start getting confused. Which numbers are the right ones that we're using now in some cases? And that's that cross if we didn't provide anything, but said we want to put something in.
Yep.
So I understand them. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Jeff, there was a follow-up to the original question asked. Can we use that 0.6 PU of base impedance rule? I don't know if we're...
I'm not familiar with that rule.
Okay. Something we can kind of follow up on.
Yeah, we can follow up on that.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. All right, so this is sort of touching on those transformer limits that I mentioned earlier. This really goes more along with behind-the-meter customers, simplified applications, that sort of thing, where there's an existing transformer and you're proposing generation that's going to exceed the nameplate rating of that transformer. So that's a situation where we'd have to upgrade that, make sure that there won't be an overload. So you can't put, your 600 kilowatt solar system behind our 500 kVA pad mount transformer. So we'd have to upgrade it, make it a 750, something like that.
What's your rule of thumb? Like, so you have a 100 or 50 kVA transformer. You don't even want to do 50 or 100 kilowatts, because you also have reactive power on it. So do you do like a 0.9 factor on it?
I think
where you can max load to?
Yeah, I mean, usually we go with kilowatts. We can look at meter data. So I think usually we go up to the kVA value.
Oh, you do? Okay.
So that's pretty basic. Is anybody familiar with secondary network systems at all? Do you know where you might find one of those around Massachusetts? Anybody? No, so those are more frequently found in like a city. So in Massachusetts, we have secondary networks in Worcester, Lynn, and Brockton. Now, there's also one, I believe, in Providence, but I don't work in Rhode Island, so don't quote me on that.
Also, a website too helps out. It has a display of where the areas are, the streets that might have network on it. Listed as in the application. You can, before you do that, you can always look at the areas with network might be turned on. So they have maps are laid out.
Thanks. And so also, in the ESB, there's a link that will bring you to the National Grid website, and it'll show you those maps that Alex just mentioned. So it'll show you, your street view, basically. If you're on this street, and you see like a red line, I think it is on that map, on this street, then there's a secondary network system. And I can tell you, I don't see a lot of applications on secondary network systems. There's no space for megawatt solar farm in a city, but even small applications, even like 50 kilowatts, can become big problems on systems like this because of the network protectors. So here you got a radial feeder. This is your station breaker. You got some taps here, ties to other feeders. You got a fuse tap, another sectionalized line. That's fine. That's simple enough to deal with. It generally has a good amount of load on it. Everything's great. Then you get to a secondary network system like this, and you've got network protectors that are, coordinating with each other. You've got all these transformers here, and you've got this sort of, tied into the substation through a bunch of other feeders. So if you have those, they're way more complicated than this radial feeder sort of situation here. So it takes, we will do a study for it. I can tell you though, it's going to be a lot more complicated than a radial system interconnection. So what we're seeing now, I think Tim might have mentioned that we're getting into the point of DG saturation on some feeders, even on some substations as a whole. We're backfeeding into the transmission system. And somebody's question, which Tim covered, I do want to elaborate on. It was the one about sort of what level do we reach feeder saturation. It depends is my answer for that one. We can upgrade things. We can upgrade the station getaway to be something greater than like 556 spacer cable, but you're not. I mean, at that point, one, it's probably non-standard construction, but two, that's really just you're getting to the extremes of the equipment right there, and that's a point where it gets really expensive. A point where it gets really complicated, construction times go way out, and that's sort of what I would call feeder saturation, because we've talked about internally, okay, let's put a number on this. And we pretty much realized, from what I've seen, we can't put a number on this because it depends on the feeder. And so, in my experience, we have never told a customer, your DG on this feeder is not feasible. We'll tell you it's feasible, but it's this expensive. So it's really, it depends a lot on where you are. A lot of those do come from the excessive voltage regulation issues, which is really flicker, the less formal term of that. And that's sort of, it kind of is a stability issue. And this is just sort of what we see now on some of our systems where we meter at the substation. So before you had this really nice, like weekly graph where you've got a peak that looks, great and everything, and then you get all sorts of clouds passing over PV on these feeders, and you just see the peak shifting down and to the later on in the day. So it's changing our whole system, not necessarily for the worse. It's just more complicated. And this is like sort of a zoomed in view of that, and we actually do see this where we meter at our substations, which is kind of cool. But also this is sort of where we get into flicker problems on these feeders. So we get customers complaining sometimes, my lights are flickering in my house, something like that on a cloudy day where we've got 5 megawatts of PV on one of these feeders or so. That's a problem because it does degrade the customer's service before, a PV site might have gone in. So we do try and mitigate that issue, but we of course try to screen it out before it even gets to the point of being an issue on the feeder. So we'll tell you again in the system impact study, we found a flicker issue. This is how we can mitigate it. Our anti-islanding policy did change recently, which is kind of a big change. So a lot of certified inverter projects won't need DTT anymore. So that's a positive for customers. We're trusting the UL certification a little bit more than we previously were. 3B0 is a little bit of an expensive upgrade too. For those of you doing simplified applications, you may not have seen this before, but in complex applications, if you need 3B0, you need these things installed at the substation. Substation work is inherently very expensive, high voltage equipment. It's all pretty compact, it's very specialized. And that's sort of, that is based on DG on the feeder compared to the minimum load of the substation. There's a calculation that we do to work all this out. And then we'll tell you if that's required in the study or not. This is based on the MPCC Directory 12 curve. This is actually the MPCC Directory 12 curve. I do like this slide better. So user settings for complex projects greater than 30 kilowatts that we do look for. So we look for these on your one line. This is something unlike the overcurrent relays, which you can get right off the bat. So you should never be swinging in the dark when you're proposing these under and over frequency settings, because they're just, this is what you gotta follow. And so you do have these ones right here. So we look for 2 under frequency settings and 1 over frequency setting. 2 of them are pretty much defined already, but it's up to you guys to choose what goes in the triangle here. So these 2 settings in the black are acceptable. These 2 settings in the red are above the curve, outside of the triangle, and not acceptable. So we do screen for those on the one line. We'll screen for them on the witness test too every step along the way, just to make sure that they're compliant with that stuff. And so that concludes the technical portion. Does anybody have questions they didn't get to ask along the way?
Jeff, there was one last question submitted on the webinar regarding ground reference devices typically exposed to the feeder, or typically exposed to feeder unbalance, need to carry the unbalanced current continuously. Does National Grid provide any information related to typical and max unbalance besides the ground reference device?
So I think I understand that question, and we look for a 100 amp continuous current rating, if that helps. Other than that, I don't really have much else to say about that question. Yeah. Anybody else? No? All right, thank you guys for listening. If you do have questions, please feel free to either ask me after the seminar. I'm going to stick around for the rest of it. And it's my pleasure to present to you today. Thanks for listening.
Just also a note that there's a survey on the channel as well, so we'd love to get feedback if anyone has any questions or anything else, or any comments to help us improve this. We'd like to be as effective as possible. So if you get a chance to see the survey, please inquire your comments and put a survey out what you want, so we can tailor this better to what you guys
Yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh. Cool. All right, as I already introduced myself, my name is Hakov Makarichan, and I mainly, work with complex projects, 500 kW and above. I have projects now in, 5-6 megawatt ranges. So just going to cover the post-ISA process today. I know you guys heard a lot already and probably already tired, but I'm not sure how many of you guys work with complex projects. This is mainly for those projects that have redundant relays, as Jeff already talked about those. What's the process moving forward after the impact study? So basically, once we deliver the impact study to the customer, we draft an ISA, and it's the Interconnection Service Agreement. So in the ISA, we provide, all the modifications that required needs to be done, and schedule, and also the cost. And then the customer has 120 days after executing the ISA to make the first 25% construction payment. That's the payment plan. Pretty much, if the cost is over $25,000, then we go to the payment plan. Pretty much every project in this process, they have bigger costs. So we will use the payment plan, 25% within the first 120 business days, and then once we receive the first payment, then we'll, you have another 120 business days to make the second payment, which is the bigger portion, 75% of that total amount that was provided in the ISA. Once we have the first 25% payment, that's when we start our, design process. So that's when the time starts, right? So if we provide you a schedule in the ISA, let's say if it says, 10 months or 12 months or 15 months or whatever it says, that time starts the day we receive the payment, the day it's cleared in our system. So that's when we use that 25% towards design. So we kick in the design. We do a kickoff meeting. We make sure that all the parties, internal parties, stakeholders involved understand, what's involved in this project, what's the scope of work, what's the schedule. Then obviously, we'll have a designer assigned to the project, and that designer will coordinate a site visit with you guys, with the customer, and they'll meet at the site. He'll go through his, design questions and concerns, and then, he will pretty much come back to the office and do the same thing in our software program. So pretty much, during design stage, they do the detailed design sketches, construction grade estimates. So that's when we get the construction grade estimate. So that's when I can compare what we already proposed in the ISA and what's the actual. Once design is done, then it goes to another department who does gets involved into easements, right-of-way access issues, long lead items, and permits, licenses. So that's another phase that you have to go through during the process after the design is complete. So after that stage, we will start preparing the reclosers, the primary meters, obviously the projects that are 1 megawatt or close to 1 megawatt or above. They require reclosers. So we'll have to prepare recloser for this project. We have to order a recloser obviously before that, and then we'll have to put the settings in, program it, put the radios in, and make it ready for the construction. So once everything is procured, we do a pre-check, we do outage coordination, and then we start the construction. So there is a schedule. We're trying to keep up with the schedule, and sometimes some issues come up, but we mostly trying to keep up with what we already proposed in the contract. So I forgot to mention during design, if it's a telco set, then Verizon people will be involved. So we don't have control over their schedule, so you have to kind of, be able to control, or at least, be able to account for their schedule. So because we won't do any work if there is Verizon involved. So if it's a Verizon pole set area, we'll wait until Verizon will put their poles, then we will do whatever our scope of work is. So I was talking about construction. So after the construction is complete, then we go to, different phase, which is called, witness testing and commissioning. So pretty much, there is another slide that I'm going to go to, which talks about it, but this is where, we do the field commissioning, relay testing, RQ testing, if it's required, obviously. So I'm sure you guys know there are two types of interconnection. So one of them is behind the meter, where generator generates the power. The power gets used in the facility or in the building, and then unused power gets sent into the grid. Versus the other interconnection option is direct interconnection, IPP, where generated power just gets sent into the grid. Okay, so this is the slide I was talking about witness testing. So once the construction is done or about to be completed our side, or if the customer is already done with their construction, yes.
I have a question on this.
Yes.
So the first question is, what part of this is the client involved, or the customer, sorry, involved in, and what part of this is internal of the national grid? And the second question is, what part of this happens with the first payment, and what happens only after the second?
So the design portion we'll do the design portion once we have the 25% payment, and then, as I said, you once you receive that first payment, you have 120 days to make the second payment. So that's pretty much how long it will take to do the design and permitting, but we won't be able to start the construction process until we have the second payment.
Okay, but you will start considering those items for the second.
Yeah, so once the design is done, we'll do the permits, and then obviously, I know that we won't start construction until we have the second payment. But some customers, they make the payment early. They don't wait until 120 days. So in case, we're done with the design quicker, so that it can proceed, so there's no delaying issue in terms of payment. But I didn't understand the first question. Can you repeat that?
I was trying to understand what part of this the customer is involved in, and what part of it is internal national grid. That the kickoff meeting, you invite the customers, that is the internal national grid meeting.
So basically, during the design stage, you will meet with the designer at the site. You'll have some idea what's going on, where he is, how long it'll take him to do it. Then customer always can be in touch with us, with me as a project manager. With my developers, I do biweekly calls. If it's a bigger developer, I have maybe 10, 15, or 20 projects with him. Instead of just going through them every day or different days, I just coordinate a call and go through the portfolio. But this customer and national grid interaction should happen all the time. So don't just think that you put the application, you put the 25% in. Yeah, we will do the work, but it's always good to have that conversation going. Any more questions?
Just to clarify that, the 25% helps order long lead items as well, and also too for easements as well, as part of it that once we prepare it, then it would be up to the landlord to sign that.
Yeah. Okay, so we highly recommend for the customers to submit their witness test documents, as soon as they can. Don't wait at the last second. That's the point. Once we have the witness test documents, so basically there is in our website there is a link where it shows what documents, what's the template, and what's required to be submitted. So once we have the documents, I'll send that to Jeff's group. Jeff will review it. They will provide me comments, and then I will obviously share the comments with you. And then I will we will host a witness test coordination call where I'll come with my engineer, my protection engineer, and PTO people, and also you guys will bring your testing company or your engineering team to talk about the witness test documents, the comments that was already provided to you. The idea is to try to iron out all the issues, all the open items before we can go to the witness test, so that during the witness test we don't have any issues or delay issues or any other things that could have been ironed out earlier. So once we do that coordination call, we kind of expect you guys to send us the revised witness test document, one line if there is any obviously changes to it agreed upon. And once we have everything in place, we'll talk about logistics on when to do the witness test. We'll get your opinion on availability. Then we'll coordinate internally to see if that's something that we can accommodate. But typically company needs 10 days advance notice to schedule the witness test, but just remember that. Once we receive your documentation, after that point, within a month we can do a witness test, but you have to understand that you can't just call and say, we are ready, let's do the witness test tomorrow. We need 10 days to kind of work around the schedule, because nowadays, there's a lot of DG going on, and it's very busy, so it's kind of very hard to put something in a schedule in a short notice.
I just want to add to that too, right? That we want to make sure our construction is that point, right? So unless we have everything that we had to do on the system modification side, our work is done on the property, all that stuff has to be done in order for us to have the time frame. So that 10 days also involves us or having construction starting at that time period. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. So the day of witness test, we'll do the relay testing. This is the redundant relaying I was talking about, 499 kW and above. They require those relays. We'll do a functional test in service check, generator, inverter, relay test. So all this can be done within 1 day, right? So sometimes there are some technical issues on the customer side or on our side. So that's why I always, try to book the rain day, just an additional day in case we can't go through everything in 1 day, and especially if it's a big project, it has more than one relay. So, sometimes we need another day to go and finish it. And then plus the weather, right? So sometimes there is no rain, but there is not enough sun, so the inverters can't generate, so the amps are lower than what we want to see in a threshold perspective. So that's why we will wait until the sun is out so we can go back and finish our testing. So once witness test is done, the results will send to me, and then the interconnection engineer, dev group, whoever assigned to the project, they'll review the results of the witness test that we conducted. If everything looks okay, then it'll come to me. I'll coordinate with the customer that everything looked good in terms of witness testing. The next phase would be to close it out, right? So authority to interconnect. So before I send the authority to interconnect, we wanna make sure that the meter is set, bidirectional meter. We want to make sure that we have all the completion documentation. I think you touched base on that, right?
Account coding.
Yeah, account coding. So the Schedule Z is, filled out correctly. If there is some issues with the Schedule Z, there might be some delays with the coding the account or, with billing. So I know that one of you guys already mentioned, just keep in mind, to just check, make sure that the Schedule Zs are filled out correctly. I think it was Ken Yu who mentioned that. But yeah, in case of an IPP interconnection, you have to know that you have to bring your own power to commission your equipment. So we won't be able to provide you energize the system before the witness test. So just remember that. Trying to think if I missed something here. So this is my last slide here. So the key point to take away from this slide is just remember to plan ahead, right? So this process sometimes it's frustrating for the customers and for us sometimes. So there is a lot of pieces involved. So, and this is the end of it. Sometimes, customers are impatient to get interconnected because they already waited so long. So, but just overall, just plan ahead, just understand, what's involved. If Verizon is involved, make sure you secure the communication, whether it's an RTU or if it's a phone line to the meter. Nowadays, most of the customers are moving forward with the wireless meter, so we don't have to have a hardwired connection to the meter. For that, you don't have to involve Verizon anymore. It's just a phone number that you have to get. And then there is no monthly bill on that landline. So, but there is a fee, $800 fee for wireless metering. So, just make sure that you put your application in early, understand the tariff, the process. If you guys have ever any questions, you can always reach out to one of us, and we'll be more than happy to walk you through the entire process, the steps involved, so that you don't get surprises in the process. Another big thing I want to mention is municipal inspections. So once your side of the construction is complete, the wiring inspector will come and inspect the site. They'll give you the certificate of completion. They'll sign off on it. That's one of the items in the completion documentation that were required along with the Schedule Z. But also just remember that wiring inspector has other responsibility to call in besides signing on the COC. He has to call in the new service number, 1-800 number, and provide the construction work request number or the address for the site. There's a requirement called municipal inspection to clear that requirement. So I can't clear it. No one will internally until the wiring inspector calls and clears. So sometimes I had issues where we went through many coordination, recloser issues, and some other unforeseen issues, and then finally we're ready to go to the witness test. I brought everyone together to go to make it happen, and then we see that municipal inspection is still pending. So no one will go do any work until that municipal inspection is cleared. So just make sure that the wiring inspector is aware of that, and that's taken care of. I guess that's all I had. Unless you guys have any questions for me. Yes.
Do you have best practices for us to help expedite this so we can, how do we keep it from being 9 months to a year and do things?
So basically, yeah, so we can't, even if you, I was saying, just be in touch, just try to, be proactive. Even if you do all that, that will help you to be within whatever schedule, we promised. So if it's 10 months of interconnection or the schedule, we can't cut it to 3 months for sure, because there is a reason why we quoted 10 months instead of 3 months. Sometimes there is a 3V0 involved, and that's another process that we have to follow, make sure that design is done, that construction is done. So that takes time, right? So we'll do our best, but if you're talking about cutting 10 months to 3 months, I don't think that's realistic, but I mean, we'll do our best to accommodate your needs. We're always in touch with you, so we know your need date, and we're trying to work towards that.
Plus, even though we have a lot of work in our schedule already, so if our work stops, we will release 6 weeks of work that we already have, DG or non-DG related. So there, and there's other maintenance programs, other things too that our overhead crews are working. So it's important to realize that. I know to add on to what Hackett mentioned too, the only way you can help out with the process is make sure you have some experience helping out with this. That way, if there's any hiccups for Hackett and myself when we deal with this, and that way, if we ask for information, you're able to turn around quickly, and that will kind of help out with the time frame.
And the tariff is there for you guys, right? So some customers just call me and expect me to walk them through the tariff, which is fine. I mean, I know the tariff. I can help you, or at least help you find the section that answers your question. So feel free to always reach out. We're more than welcome to walk you through the entire process if there is a need for it.
And the more you share with us, the more things you tell us in advance, it helps us for our planning. So that avoids the hiccups.
I think you have a question?
Could you tell us a little bit more about your access requirement? It got mentioned in the morning that you all require 18 feet or 20 feet access road. Does that need to be leading to every pole and the line extension? Generally describe what the requirements are.
Yeah, so Alex.
Yeah, it was 18 feet. So for access roads for a site, they would do set poles. Our bucket trucks have to get in there.
So we're trying to make sure that the bucket truck can doesn't have to back up to get out of there. Has room to turn around and get out. So yeah, 18.
Yeah, so 18 feet access road, and then we'll give a list spot for the government to turn around.
These roads need to lead to every pole?
The national grid poles.
Yeah.
So whatever you do on your side, after that demarcation point, that's what we care about for that.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, guys.
Actually, Colin, we're going to talk about the first school walkthrough.
All right, so my name is Colin Walker. I am an analyst for this group, and I'm here to present the first bill walkthrough to you guys. So show of hands, has anyone had a billing problem? 1, 2, all right, 3. So we got a couple people here, so this is for you guys, and the rest of you, I guess it's just a review. So before we get started, we're gonna go through some basics. When you are using more power than you are generating, your meter will register as positive. You are importing power from your electric company. When you are generating more power than you are using, your meter will register as negative. That means you are exporting the electric company. It's important to note that in any billing period where exported energy exceeds imported, your electric bill will show negative use. And when that happens, that means you are entitled to net metering credit. Just a simple example, host customer is using 700 kilowatt hours, that means we're importing that amount. Host customer is generating 1,200 kilowatt hours, you're exporting that. Use 700 minus generation 1,200 equals export, which in this case is negative 500. The electric bill will only show the negative 500 amount, and the credit will be calculated based on that 500. So how much is that worth? Well, the first question you need to ask yourself, did I generate more energy than I use? And if yes, then the credit will depend on the rate of your net metered account. So for residential and small commercial, there are energy-only rates. Medium and large commercial rates include demand charges and time of use components, and may include other rates as well. So each rate includes several charges. The net metering credit per kilowatt hour is a combination of a few things: distribution, transmission, transition, and standard offer service charges. So what does this look like on your bill? You can find the net export will be in the metered usage section. The net metering credit will display in the delivery services section. Net metering credits are calculated using the retail rate, which may include several types of charges, such as block rates, time of use, demand charges, etc. The calculation depends on rate, class, and load zone. With different rate structures and use patterns, credits will not and may not appear the same on every net metered account. So there's a few calculations that we do. Class 1, which is not solar, wind, farm, or anaerobic digester, less than 60 kilowatts. These credits are based on the average wholesale clearing price of ISO New England for load zone during the month the credits were earned. Calculation number 2, Class 1 and Class 2, solar, wind, farm, or anaerobic digester, less than a megawatt. Credits of these type are based on rate class, load zone, and monthly applied to distribution, transmission, transition, and basic fixed service charges. This is also important to note that this class includes Class 3 governmental entities. Calculation 3, Class 3, less than 2 megawatts. This does not include governmental entities. Again, that's in calculation number 2. These credits are based on rate class, load zone, and monthly applied transmission, transition, and fixed basic service. So an example of what this will look like on your bill for a qualifying facility under 60 kW. Remember, they are reimbursed based on the ISO New England monthly charge. Here's what it will look like on the bill. We've highlighted things in red that are important. So the metered usage, the ISO clearing price, and the calculation that'll give you your amount. Calculation number 2, based on rate G2. These rate structures do not contain blocks or time of use rates. Net metering credit includes, of course, transmission, transition, distribution, and basic service charges. Again, on your bill, highlighted the important parts and also the calculation that is used to get the net metering credits. Calculation number 2, again, this time with a block rate. It's important to note that these 3 down here are different from all the others because you have to show the distribution charges. So, again, you have your important things outlined in red. The total usage and your net metering credit other, your net metering credit first 600 kilowatt hours, and the net metering credit after the first 600 kilowatt hours and what that is. So rate G3, this is time of use. The net metering credit is a combination of transmission, transition, and basic service credits, of course. We also show the off-peak and on-peak and how the net metering credits are calculated on those. Again, things are highlighted in red that are important and show the calculations. Calculation number 3. This calculation does not include distribution charges, so there are no issues related to block or time of use rates. Therefore, we can show everything on one line. So we have the peak, the off-peak, and the net metering credit charges and how that is calculated, again, highlighted in red. As it's been mentioned previously, the Schedule Z is very important, and it's important to fill it out correctly, so this section is of high importance. The Schedule Z is used to allocate net metering credits from a host account to target accounts. Net metering credits are calculated using certain components of the retail rate of the host account. The value of the net metering credit depends on the rate of the host and the class of the net metering facility. Important, there are no mechanisms for transferring specific dollar amounts, only percentages of net metering credits. That's something to keep in mind. So transfer of credits, how does that work? First thing is, when can I expect to see the first transfer of credits? Well, the first net metering credit may not appear on your bill until the month following the bill you received formal authorization to interconnect. Each month, the host account meter is read and net export is used to calculate net metering credits for that amount. The accounts processing group will transfer the credits as directed on the Schedule Z. Again, that's in percentages, not dollar amounts. Typically, net metering credits are transferred to target accounts about 1 to 2 weeks after the host accounts are billed. And net metering credits will be displayed on both the host account and target accounts on the next month's bill. As host customers and target customers may not be in the same billing cycle, transfers from one month may not show up until the following month and may not always occur on the same date. So some frequently asked questions. How often can I change my Schedule Z? The answer to that is twice a year. When will my Schedule Z allocations take effect? When we receive a revised Schedule Z and the accounts are updated, those changes should take effect the next billing cycle. Will the bill show credits transferred from host account to target accounts? The host account will show transfer credit and dollar amounts. The target account will show transfer credit and dollar amounts. And on this slide right here, we show exactly what that will look like on a bill. So as you can see, no important information is released, just dollar amounts, how much is transferred and how much is credited. The top one is the host customer, and the bottom one is target customer. Sure.
Comment that I think Bob may add, probably people, but just a comment on what we see on the transfer of credit and charges. A lot of folks are asking, how do I know where the credit goes? How much went to such and such account? It's in the works, not there yet. We hear you. We'll see that change. I don't know exactly what the timing of delivering that change is, but you'll actually be able to see the accounts individualized that the credits are headed out to. Just kind of wanted to say hi and also to comment that that's a big system change. It takes a little bit to figure this out, and we are working on it.
All right, thank you, Bob. The next few slides are about how to fill in your schedule with me. I won't walk you through it, but if you have any questions, please refer to the slide. It's a very good resource. It tells you what to do, how to fill it out, and what sections need to be filled out and what sections are important. However, I will call out right here, the last page. Please, please, please put the primary account holder here. It's very important. So yeah, with that, the rest of the 2000 seminar in Massachusetts are up here. Hopefully again will be hosted on October 19th in North Andover, Brockton. Location is yet to be determined, I believe. Yes.
We'll set out usually a month in advance for the next one, so we'll determine that more closer to September timeframe and get set on the information there. So I mentioned before this, your feedback is important to us. Our email is below, just @nationalgrid.com. Any questions, any further comments that you have, anything anything else there. We'll still be here in the room here. If you guys want to have any breakouts or side sessions with the subject matter experts here, we'll still be around. Well, anything else you want to add?
Nope, I want to thank everybody for coming today. Hopefully we got some of your questions answered. Hopefully, I think we have a couple of takeaways once we come on the phone itself. But again, appreciate you coming. Do you have a question?
Real quick, I reached out to the folks participating in the webinar, asking for any questions here at the end. Real quick, there was a question that came in: how are credits transferred to a target customer who has a different supplier? I'm not sure if we have someone who can speak to that.
Yeah, so it won't be transferred. You'll have to be a national rate there. So if it's you're getting a supply from somebody else, if it's an non-national grid billing account, then we cannot transfer that credit over.
Any other questions in the room? That's great. So appreciate you guys coming out.
Thanks, everybody.